Well, hey there, YouTube. I'm Peach, and it's been a while. I've been busy with a lot of stuff in my personal life that is way too boring to go over with you, which you probably don't care about anyway, so on to the video. As my longtime viewers know, I'm a minority in many ways, and as such, I've been privy to this disturbing misconception among other minorities that, by virtue of whatever the fuck they happen to be, they are incapable of being bigoted assholes. No matter what they say, they are not bigoted assholes. Even if they say bigoted things and make sweeping generalizations about other groups, they are not bigoted assholes. How does that work? Well, apparently, if you belong to a group that is or has been demoralized and targeted for attack by a majority, then you can't be a bigot. Somehow. Wait. I don't want to put words in other people's mouths, so let's just listen to what they have to say.
First and foremost, I think that we need to make a distinction between racism and prejudice, right? Because I think that a lot of us, especially if we grew up in like the 90s, we have this kind of view of racism where it's always this prejudice on the basis of your skin tone. Every time I have a conversation with a white person about this, they always end up doing this thing where they screenshot the definition of racism and they're like, well, here's what racism is, da 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 da. You know, and let me just say this, right? If racism were simply just someone not liking me because I'm black, that would be pretty sweet, to be honest with you. If racism were only, hey, you're black, I don't like you, that's cool, you know, I would be whatever. Because to me, it's really easy for me to just dismiss somebody who doesn't like me because of something I can't help, you know, and then I wouldn't change, my melanin on fleek. You know what I mean? But that's not what racism is. But racism is so much more than that. To me, racism is segregation. Racism is something like slavery that was still allowed to happen. Racism is the redlining of school districts that keep brown and black people in impoverished schools and impoverished areas. Racism is systemic. So at what point can a black person be racist, right? For me, the point where a black person can be racist is when we have the financial, the social capital to actually be able to oppress white people.
It appears to me that somewhere along the way, some misinformed people decided that bigotry was synonymous with social and legal discrimination. And while bigotry and discrimination do belong to the same family group of hate, they're not the same thing. Bigotry, in this context, is a state of mind in which a person expresses prejudice and intolerance against a group of people based on irrelevant or superficial factors, such as sex, gender, complexion, class, nationality, ethnicity, sexuality, and in many cases, even religion. It's not that these factors have absolutely no part in shaping who we are, but they're not the final word on our identity. Unless you really are just that unremarkable. Discrimination, on the other hand, is the big bad when a society or even a government establishes distinctions, exemptions, barriers, or denials of rights, goods, or services for a group of people based on said irrelevant factors. Discrimination doesn't always have to work against the group it's targeting, but we usually think of the ones that do. Being a bigot has nothing to do with your place and standing in society. It's got nothing to do with how much power and privilege you personally have, or the amount that is collectively held by others who happen to fall into your group. It's about what you think and how you treat people based on said irrelevant factors. And if it's wrong for white, straight, cisgender men and women to hold such positions, then it's wrong for everybody. Because otherwise, you're just a hypocrite resorting to special pleading. Now, more often than not, I see this attitude from a few black folks and some white people riding the self-hate train, but this next one is definitely a lot more blatant. You may already be familiar with Milo Stewart, and for those of you who've been in the community for a very long time, going back about 7 or 8 years, Milo reminds me a lot of this blast from the past.
Hey guys, this is Apologetics. Most of you already know me, and the feedback's probably not the best because I am in a lot of opposition and I do controversial subjects that I debate on. But right now I'm going to talk about homosexual marriage, which is a big controversial topic, and most people already know me as the right-winged, bigot, discriminator, homophobe on YouTube. Awesome!
Yeah! Remember her? Well, here's the trans version of that monstrosity.
This video is going to include discussions about racism, and because I am white, none of these thoughts about racism in this video are my original thought. I accredit to most of the ideas that I have picked up from these two videos created by two very lovely black YouTubers. So go and check them out, please, because they're lovely and awesome, and like, why not?
Oh, I see. You're white, so you can't think for yourself on the subject of racism. Because in your perception, it's not possible for anyone to be racist against you, and therefore you can't have an original thought for fear of offending some non-white person who may be as short-sighted as you are. And if you do speak, it has to be the accepted rhetoric that has been regurgitated from whichever dark-skinned person you've chosen to adopt, because as you clearly imply, only they can speak freely on the matter because they're not white. Let that marinate in your mind for a moment. You're only taking their word because they're black. Not because of who they are, but because of what they are. It's pretty fucking racist, wouldn't you say? It's just as repulsive to me to take me at my word simply because I'm female, or because I'm not white, or because I'm not upper middle class, as it would be for someone to dismiss me for those same reasons. And for the record, neither one of those people he mentioned are anything near the category of lovely. They are both vile, racist scumbags who use their ethnicity as an excuse to be vile, racist scumbags.
All white people are racist, all men are misogynistic, all cisgender people are transphobic, all members of a majority are biased against the members of the minority or oppressed group. In fact, most people are racist, misogynistic, transphobic, ableist, etc. I am racist, classist, ableist, and I probably contribute to many other systems of marginalization that I am not aware of.
Look, I'm an American teenager who fancies myself to be so incredibly unique and edgy because I'm a blowhard who happens to be a minority, when in reality I'm just a carbon copy of about 1 million other people that I've seen on TV and the internet. I'm far too young and sheltered to have even the foggiest concept of the hand-to-hand combat that is the real fight for equal rights and protections that others bleed and die for, but all the same, I'm going to claim a struggle that's not really mine. Because I'm bored and self-absorbed, so rather than tackle the actual barrier standing in my way, I have to create conflict and enemies out of people who are otherwise already on my side of the fence. That way, I can momentarily forget how lucky I am to live in the age of abundance and advanced science, as well as hitting the genetic and economic jackpot, so I can find a way to live with myself. Because let's be honest, nobody feels sorry for the privileged. You know, this is going to make me feel very old, despite the fact that I am a millennial, but I have to address a certain sect of young people who encompass the late teens to mid-20s. The tweenties, if you will. Some of them exhibit symptoms of a disease called dipshit. Hashtag not all tweenties. Just like not all toddlers go through the so-called terrible twos. But it is a common malady that affects the young and even the intelligent. I, too, suffered years of holding consciously and subconsciously the idiotic presumption that despite my limited life experiences, I already knew more than everybody else who had already been down my path. And for that, there is no cure, but time. Only time will teach these people that they are nowhere near as oppressed as they fancy themselves to be. That's not to say that bigotry and discrimination do not occur. They do, and some of that discrimination is still quite legal. But that's not what Milo was talking about.
Words like racist, misogynistic, and transphobic are not insults, nor are they stereotypes or generalizations. Rather, they are facts about the way we are socialized in a Western society, and in most other societies.
You see, Milo is redefining the terms associated with bigotry to fit his piss-poor bullshit narrative. And in so doing, by declaring everyone who isn't white to be racist, by declaring everyone who isn't trans to be transphobic, and that would logically have to follow every single group and demographic. If you're not gay, you're homophobic. If you're not Muslim, you're Islamophobic. If you're not disabled, you're ableist. If you're not elderly, you're ageist. If you're not fat, you're a fat shamer. And on with the bullshit. By declaring everyone a bigot in some form or another, he ultimately equates decent people who aren't actually bigots, who don't treat people who are different like shit, and may even be fierce defenders and supporters of disenfranchised groups, to be essentially no different than the Fred Phelpses of the world. Unless, of course, one happens to be an obese, black, Muslim, gay, trans woman in her 80s, with bipolar disorder, and wheelchair-bound.
Saying that we're all raised to believe that gender is defined by anatomy and chromosomes is not a stereotype. It's a fact about how we are raised. Even if you have liberal parents or teachers who teach you about gender identity, you still come into contact with the idea of biological gender through the media or through interactions with other people. Even if you are raised by open-minded people, you will still be psychologically affected by living in a society built on imperialism, which, by the way, created cisnormativity and heteronormativity.
Milo is just like those sick religious fucks who believe in original sin. It doesn't matter who you are, and it doesn't matter what you do or what you actually believe. The very fact that you were born into this world makes you guilty. I'm just glad that hashtag not all Christians actually believe in that. You know, like that reverend who once talked about wanting his children to live in a world where people wouldn't make judgments about them based on nothing more than the color of their skin, but rather on the content of their character.
Most people are racist, misogynistic, transphobic, ableist, etc.
You know, when I made my video about gender and labels last year, I said specifically that nobody else can define who we are. I stand by that assertion. Take Milo here. Nature made him female, but his gender obviously doesn't jive with that. Nobody could have determined that except for him, and as such, nobody can tell him definitively that he's wrong since nobody else lives in his head. But apparently, he doesn't afford that same respect and understanding to others. He's telling everybody what they are, and that they're bigots merely by virtue of their birth, even though he probably doesn't appreciate it when people tell him that he's a girl merely by virtue of his birth. But whatever. Hey, all of you. Yeah, I know you're all openly boycotting North Carolina by refusing to travel and do business there because of that stupid fucking restroom law. But did you know that despite your convictions, you are all transphobes? And you will always will be because you were born into a society in which gender and sex are closely tied. Sorry. Hey, I wasn't done. If you want to see more of me, make sure you click the subscribe button and follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are in the description. You can also catch me on the Breakfast Club channel, and if you are so inclined, you can support me on Patreon. Bye now.